Coming up next, exclusively on 97.5 and 1240 KFH.
I'm Bridget Condon with NFL Network Now on the Westwood One Radio Network. Bengals quarterback Joe Burrow says a contract extension is in the works as he enters his fourth season in the league. Burrow says he's involved in those negotiations, but his focus is taking the next step on the field after a career year in 2022.
I think, I had my best year last year. I think I've improved every year and still a lot of room to grow. There's always room to improve every offseason, every game, every week. You just try to find a way to get better every year.
Dolphins pass rusher Emmanuel Ogbah says he's fully cleared and ready to go after missing the final 8 weeks of the season with a torn triceps. Ogbah racked up 19 sacks in his first 2.5 seasons in Miami. Titans wide receiver Treylon Burks says he stayed in Nashville this offseason to work on his conditioning in the humidity. He says it has made a big difference in his conditioning and speed. This has been NFL Network Now on the Westwood One Radio Network.
Anywhere fans go to cheer on their team, there are behind-the-scenes MVPs ensuring everything is game day ready. We see you, Joe, fixing seats so every fan can enjoy every game. And Allie, who keeps her stadium running smoothly from the moment the first game starts to the last play of the season. At Grainger, you're our MVPs, and we're always here for you with supplies and solutions for every industry and 24/7 customer support. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Do you have an invention idea but don't know what to do next? Call InventHelp today. We have representatives nationwide who will explain the InventHelp process step by step. Over 10,000 patents have been secured through InventHelp's patent referral services. The InventHelp data bank includes thousands of companies who have agreed to review new ideas. We've been helping inventors since 1984. Let's help you next. Get started today.
Call 1-800-217-4380. That's 1-800-217-4380. Again, 1-800-217-4380.
Jacob Albrocht, Tommy Castor. This is Sports Daily on Wichita's #1 sports radio, 97.5 and 1240 KFH.
I mean, it was so much fun to watch, and took me a while to kind of wind down after that Lakers-Nuggets game. And I'll tell you what, like, historically, I've not been a huge fan of the NBA playoffs in the last 10, 15 years. This one, for me, has exceeded my expectations. Granted, they weren't very high to begin with, but, man, it's been fun to watch, and game one was so much fun, so I'm looking forward to getting into that today.
Yeah, we'll start there in a bit as we make our way through what's turning out to be a busy Wednesday. The Spurs win the draft lottery, which is very interesting. There are all kinds of good things on the plate today, and we'll get to as many of them as we can. But yes, let's start with game one. That was, there's about a billion things. One, Austin Reeves was great in the fourth quarter. We can start there. The former Shocker spent some time here. Had a really nice game, as did LeBron James, as did Anthony Davis, and the Nuggets win. We asked yesterday, can the Nuggets win games where the Lakers stars are good? The answer to that is clearly yes. Can the Lakers hang when the Nuggets make everything? The answer to that is clearly yes. I don't think we take a whole lot from this, Tommy. I kept saying my brother-in-law is a Nuggets fan, and I was like, I don't think the Lakers are going to lose any sleep about this loss. Like, yes, the Nuggets won. They feel good about it, but if you're the Lakers, I mean, like when the Nuggets made everything and we were right there. I think the Lakers feel fine. But honestly, Tom, I think the Nuggets feel fine too, because you withstood great games. I'm talking great games from Anthony Davis and LeBron James. And you came out on top and your star was good. And those things happen. So game one in the books, and sign me up. This series is going to be great.
Yeah, the Nuggets really pulled away early on. Like they blew the game wide open. I think it was an 18-point lead at halftime. And then credit to the Lakers. They battled back. And it was really up to the Nuggets to hang on to win the game. And they ultimately were able to do so. But the Lakers never folded. They never gave up. They battled to the very end. And so that very easily could have set the tone in a different way, in a negative way for the Lakers for this series. If Denver had blown them out, that would have been, I think, really difficult mentally and emotionally to try to overcome for the Lakers moving forward in this series. But because they hung tight, because they were resilient, because they battled back, now, even though the Nuggets have a 1-0 lead, and I think the Nuggets will win this series, I think it's gonna be that much more challenging altogether of a series for both teams because of the fact that the Lakers battled back. Had they rolled over in game one, that's really, really difficult to try to come back from.
It is. It's the one thing I will take away, I think, and feel pretty strongly about is Denver's going to have to play much better defense. Just in general, that we saw the Lakers, even though there were a ton of points scored, the Lakers defensively looked better to me than Denver did late in the game. Denver, again, was just making everything. It was absurd there for a while. But, I mean, if you're Denver, like, you cannot allow, what did they get, 72 second half points? Like, that's not going to work. So Denver's got to find a way to be better defensively. I will say that. And I think that they can. But it's a really interesting game one. I see the headline on ESPN this morning, all morning, should the Lakers be encouraged or discouraged? I kept thinking encouraged as I'm watching this. Like, the Lakers are going to be fine in this series. But then at the same time, like, one of my biggest questions going into it is, can Denver win games when the stars for the Lakers are really good? And they did that. So, I think Denver doesn't have to try very hard to be encouraged either about a win. And when they should have had, right? Game one at home, they're the home team. They should get the win. They held on. But I think both teams are probably, like, it felt a little bit like this thing is just settling in. And no, Denver's not going to shoot that way in every game. But no, I don't think Anthony Davis and LeBron James are going to be that good collectively in every game either. So, round one to Denver, I loved it. And it's really interesting. I don't talk a lot of NBA among friends. Like, we're not, chatting it up and shooting things back and forth. Everybody was pretty locked into that game last night. Which is interesting to me, because that was the first time I've really seen that happen. But I do think it's got that kind of vibe to it. Like, this is reminiscent of Lakers runs, honestly, most recently, of the Kobe Shaq variety, where just sort of everybody's locked into it. And, one way or the other, whether you love the Lakers, you love LeBron, or you're on the other side of that, this series is interesting. And I think it's going to be great. I hope it's a long series. I hope all the games are as entertaining as game one was, because this is the NBA at its best, in my opinion.
And what's crazy is that we're almost 10 minutes into this discussion. We haven't even mentioned Jokic yet, who had another triple double last night. So
Yawn.
like,
right, another triple double.
It's routine for him at this point, right? And so I think it's funny to me that there's this thought collectively, and I think we've all thought it at one point or another, that question of what's it gonna take to stop Jokic? What can the Lakers do to stop? I don't know if you can. I honestly don't know if you can. I think it's more of a question of, how do you almost let him get his and then try to overcome it? Like, that's almost, I think that has to be the strategy, because of just how dominant that guy is. And it tells you a lot about his personality. It tells you a lot about the way that he is, I think, perceived in the NBA. And I'm not, throwing us under the bus or anything, because there are a lot of other storylines. But again, it took us 10 minutes to even get to Jokic. So I think that tells you a little bit about the way that he's perceived just overall. but I mean, he's a dominant player.
He is. And he's just so, is it graceful? Like, is graceful the right word for it? Because, Max coming in, he was like, man, I really like that, Jokic guy. And I'm going to guess, Max, that you don't watch a ton of the NBA. Probably, like a lot of people around here, because we lock into other things like college basketball. But it was almost like Max was, and I think there are a lot of fans this way. He was like, man, I was just introduced to this guy. He's really good. He reminded Max of Larry Bird. Jokic is graceful. Like, there's nothing violent about his game or nothing like that has been traditional flash NBA, but here he is 34, 21 and 14. And that's just like what he does. Right. And
Incredible.
it's remarkable. And I hope that this series is the platform he's needed to just remind everyone it's okay that he was a back-to-back MVP, because he was, right. And it's okay that maybe he should have won it this year. Like, these things are okay. You don't have to feel guilty about calling Jokic one of the best players in the world right now, because he absolutely is. And this series is going to give him the platform to really go out there and convince a lot of people, because anytime you're on the other side of LeBron James, the spotlight is bigger. And that's what we have now. And for Denver, like, Denver is so dang good. And their roster, their starting five is so dang good. And like, they just haven't gotten that credit all year. And I think, again, it's because of recent history, but they've always been a little unlucky in recent years, right? With injuries or whatever it is. They're finally there at full strength. And you're like, man, it's a really good team. Like, I remember these players. Like, these are all really good players. I think if you listen to, speaking of Jokic, by the way, Van Gundy and Mark Jackson last night, they really seemed, though, to think that the Lakers found something in Rui Hachimura being on Jokic as something that looked good to them and probably will be something that's featured in this series. I thought they were good. I think that those three together with Mike Breen, who's awesome, are really, really entertaining and good on calls, because they have so many discussions about things. But I don't know. Good luck stopping Jokic. I don't think that'll happen. I don't think Anthony Davis is going to score 40 in every game either. I don't know what to predict, Tommy, the rest of the way. Everything, like, if you look at a box score for the Lakers, you like what you see, right? And you think those are the tickets to wins for them, but it didn't come. They didn't get it done. And that's a tip of the cap to Denver too. So all night, like, watching the game, I was like, oh man, the Lakers are going to feel great about this. Like, they're going to be good. And then this morning I woke up and just sort of changed a little bit on that. Again, it's like, yeah, but man, Denver is too. Like, if I'm Denver and we did that, the Lakers looked like they were going to come back. We still held them off. And we now know that we can withstand that kind of game from those two guys, because we can go blow for blow with them. And that right. has to be a pretty good feeling for Denver too.
Well, and hasn't that been the question for the Lakers for a while, is even outside of LeBron and AD, who's going to be on for the Lakers? What's the third option? What's the fourth option? How does that work? And Denver showed last night that they have a complete top to bottom roster, right? All five starters in double figures, Bruce Brown coming off the bench and scoring 16. I mean, incredibly balanced offensive attack from Denver. And so, as the Lakers are trying to defend that, it's kind of like pick your poison, right? Like, do you go after Jokic and try to collapse onto him and prevent him from getting a triple double?
Not
because you've got four other guys on that roster, whether you're talking about Jamal Murray or Michael Porter Jr., or, I mean, honestly, whoever it is that, Denver has, they can beat you. And so that really becomes, I think, difficult for the Lakers to try to combat, because you have this star player in Jokic who can put up obscene numbers, but then it's not just him. They have a really balanced attack outside of him too.
They do. And that's going to be, I mean, if Denver shoots like that with their other guys, because let me look, like, what did they go minus Jokic from three? 7, 10, the starter. And I'm just talking about the starters here, went 10 of about 22. So just under 50%. And then, a couple bench guys each had a 3-2. So collectively for the game, they were better than that. But just out of those starters, that's going to be that's, I don't know if it's sustainable. If it is, the Lakers aren't going to win this series. I don't think it is. Not to that clip. So, that's clearly going to be the counter to trying to take Jokic away, is to shot make from the outside if you're Denver.
Yeah.
And if they do that, then but that's not, it's easier said than done. And can the Lakers adjust too? Like if Hachimura can handle Jokic a little bit better, then maybe they don't have quite as many open looks from three. They were hitting them. Credit to them, man. I don't know what to make of the rest of the series. I just know that was as fun a basketball game as we've had. And it looked like for a little while it was not going to be fun. I mean, Denver was cruising there for a little bit, and it looked like they were going to just blow them out of the water. And that is a ton of credit to the Lakers for hanging in there behind, two old guys.
Yeah.
And some pieces that have been put together since the trade deadline that are really interesting. Not that Austin Reeves is one of those guys, but man, he couldn't miss late. And don't you feel like he's a shocker? I know, like he went to Oklahoma and all that stuff, but man, when you're watching those games and you're seeing Austin Reeves knock down shots in the Western Conference Final, that feels like he's a shocker, man. It's like we watched him do that at Wichita State. I remember that game where he just could not miss and just hit a ton of threes. And you're like, that looks familiar.
The thing about Denver too, I think after game one is that they showed why they are the betting favorites in the West, right? Why they are the prohibitive favorite in the Western Conference. That game one, it was crucial for them. If they went down, and the Lakers go up 1-0, then I think there start to be questions about, should Denver be favored in this series? Are they as good as we thought that they were? So I think that, we've talked about it for several days now about the pressure being on the shoulders of Denver and the organization. I think with that win and hanging on the way that they did, I think it shows that, they are comfortable in this spot. I think it shows that they wanted to flex a little bit, come out, running. And I know that the Lakers battled back, but they wanted to flex and show and prove why they are the number one seed and why they are the betting favorite in the Western Conference. So that was, I think, extremely important for them to alleviate a little bit of that pressure to go 1-0 up. They just got to continue that.
Yeah. And don't forget either, like if Denver wasn't playing the Lakers, I think they would be a bigger favorite than Boston. I think the reason Boston is the odds-on favorite is because they have to play Miami to get to the finals. If Denver was playing Miami, I think Denver would be the favorite, right? If you flip the opponents around. So that has something to do with it too. Denver's roster is the best roster, top to bottom. Boston's is good, but that doesn't mean it's a guarantee they're going to win. They've just this is a really, really good team with. Well, let me just ask you this way. Is Nikola Jokic the best player in the playoffs? Is he the best player playing still?
Yep, 100%.
Man, that's a really interesting question, right? Because I think Tatum is outstanding. Anthony Davis, when he's on, still feels the most impactful to me. And there's LeBron sitting there who
Jimmy Butler's played great in the playoffs.
I know.
But nobody else is doing what Jokic is doing in the playoffs. Right?
I love it so much. I love that Jokic's game is so different, and it's going to take us time. And I'm really starting to like the Dirk comparison that I've made. And again, it's not in the game itself. It's in the perception of the game. It took us a long time nationally, collectively, to really love and appreciate what Dirk Nowitzki was and how unique his game was and how it was really you couldn't defend him. You just couldn't because he faded and he was 7 foot tall. Jokic has got that too. It just looks so different even now after 2 MVPs that I think it's still taking people time. This series, I would say this series, if he continues to play like this and Denver wins, for a lot of people, this will be that moment where they finally are just willing to admit that Jokic is one of, if not the best player in the world. I mean, I think
it's ridiculous that it's taken this long.
I know
the guys won back-to-back MVPs,
but
it's
not ridiculous in the NBA for guys to need platforms to get to that point, right? Imagine if Steph Curry did not have the titles early on, right? Imagine if Steph Curry was like Damian Lillard And, they maybe sniffed around on the playoffs a couple times, but it was the platform that put Curry in that, place of adoration. And I think that the same thing can happen with Jokic. If they're able to get through this series, especially if they're able to win a title this year, I think it's going to happen that way for Giannis. Don't you think? Like Giannis finally, he kind of had all the flash and people picked apart his game. They get their title. Same thing with Kawhi Leonard. Kawhi Leonard was the best two-way player. And, at that point, and people are like, yeah, and then he leads Toronto to that title. And then it's boom, it's solidified. Like, okay, that's how good he is. I think the same thing will happen with Jokic. The only difference between Jokic and a guy like Kawhi Leonard is Jokic ought to be in the consideration to be the best player in the world right now. And I just don't think people think of him that way for whatever reason, despite the MVPs, despite all the numbers. But I think it's absolute reality here. Like, I think that's what we're looking at. It's not Durant. It's not LeBron. It's not Doncic. It's not maybe not Jason Tatum. It's not, it's Jokic. And he's got a chance to really get out there and prove it. And I'm excited about that part of this series too.
Yeah, I don't want to knock Joel Embiid winning the MVP.
Not at all.
Jokic is a better player as of right now. I mean, just compare the way that they, Embiid played in the playoffs. I know he was not 100%. And then the way Jokic has played, I mean, come on. Like, I get why Embiid won the MVP, but as of right now, I would take Jokic over anybody else in the playoffs.
I think I would too. I've got to, my problem is like total impact for me is something that's a little bit harder to get a grasp on, like total impact, offense and defense. That's where I would have to really probably divert to others to get that true impact. Like that's where Anthony Davis, like his defensive impact is very obvious, right? And so I don't know. Consistent, yes. Overall, yeah. I mean, I think I'm with you, but I just can't wait for the rest of this series. So that's game one. I mean, it delivered, man. I hope the Eastern Conference, I hope the Eastern Conference finals can get close. I don't think they will be where this series is, but I hope we get some entertaining games on the other side too. That game one is tonight. That tips at 7:30. All right, Tommy and I will come back. We got recruiting news for both KU on the men's side, Wichita State, that I think people can get excited for. On the women's side, we'll explain if you didn't catch that yesterday afternoon. All kinds of good stuff. 869-1240 is the IHOP hotline. We appreciate everybody listening. We appreciate everybody watching the video streams on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Tommy and I will be back. More Sports Daily right after this.
Hey, it's Jim Rome. Join me afternoons at 11 on the #1 sports station in Wichita, 97.5 and 1240 KFH.
The commercials are over.
Yo, I haven't got all day.
869-1240.
Time to get busy.
This is Sports Daily on KFH.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Sports Daily on KFH. Jacob Albrock, Tommy Castor with you here. A lot of nuggets to get here into the show today. Tommy, let's talk, just because we've been on the NBA, the Spurs win the lottery, win the draft lottery. And that's a big win. I think they moved up, 2 spots from where they should have been. Charlotte goes 2, Portland 3. Detroit's the big loser. They fall to 5 after being the highest percentage chance. People were worried about the Mavericks. They land at 10 because of the controversy to end their season. But San Antonio is where this goes. Wembanyama is the prize. I mean, he looks like a generational type talent. San Antonio's timing on winning the NBA draft lottery is all time. They've done it 3 times. David Robinson, Tim Duncan, and now it's going to be Wembanyama. And I mean, come on now. Like, Greg Popovich is never going to stop coaching. You think Greg Popovich is not going to take this opportunity? Are you kidding me? For one of the great basketball franchises in cities, like, this is awesome. I was really hoping that the Spurs would get this, because it's the only way the Spurs are ever going to stay relevant is to time this kind of stuff. And now they'll have another generational type talent. I mean, this dude, if you haven't seen like clips of Wembanyama, you got to check it out. He's insane. Like he is very uniquely gifted. But this is going to be awesome. A perfect landing spot for him, in my opinion. And for that, I mean, they're going nuts there. You want to talk about great fans? Great fans. San Antonio Spurs fans are awesome. That's one of my favorite cities in the country. I love San Antonio. Whenever people ask me what's my favorite city in Texas, I tell them San Antonio. Love it down there. I think this is really cool, and I'm excited. I know a lot of people were mad, though, man. They did not want the Spurs and Popovich to get this.
Well, you said he's uniquely gifted, and that's true. He's also uniquely built. I saw like video clips of him, and I'm like, that can't be real. Like, that's got to be some kind of simulation or video game. He's like, what, 7'4", and looks like a skinny little guy. I mean, obviously really tall, but like tiny arms, tiny legs. But the dude is phenomenal. And, so there's been a ton of hype around him coming into the NBA. I think he'll live up to it. I mean, I don't know of a reason outside of health why he wouldn't. And, assuming he stays healthy, which I think he probably will. And this is a great landing spot, to your point, with San Antonio, because they have experience, right? They've got experience in developing big men. I don't know if there's another franchise in the NBA historically that has done a better job with their big men than San Antonio has and Greg Popovich has, with Robinson, with Duncan, now with Wembanyama. This makes a ton of sense. And, going back to your point about Greg Popovich, I would have thought that had they not gotten the #1 pick and not gotten Wembanyama, Popovich maybe had 1 or 2 more years left. He might have a little bit more in the tank at this point and, want to hang on and see, how far this guy can take him.
Well, and 2, think about this, like, because Kawhi Leonard, I think he was drafted by the Pacers, but he ended up with he's essentially drafted by San Antonio. And like, their track record with true star players is, I don't know if it's impeccable, but it's pretty close to impeccable. I mean, like, they are so good in the draft. And like, when they get these guys, they just don't miss, and they do a great job of surrounding them with talent and all of these things, all the titles, all the star power, all the different generations of that. Those teams have been anchored, whether it was Robinson, who didn't get one until Duncan got there, and then Kawhi Leonard later. But this reads and screams to me like the Spurs are back, right? If they because I just think like the chances of them screwing this up are low. They have a long history of this.
And I don't know if there's another coach in the NBA that if you are a talent being drafted into a franchise that you would want to play for to be developed at a high level than Greg Popovich. I don't know if there currently is another one. I mean, maybe, gosh, I'm trying to think. Maybe Eric Spoelstra historically has done a good job at developing talent. But man, it's Pop, right? And so any young player being drafted and going into the league, I would imagine would be kind of excited at the opportunity to be developed by that franchise, by that organization, by the coaching staff, and then by Greg Popovich himself.
It is. I mean, it's fun. I can't. It was what I was hoping would happen all the way through. Like, please let the Spurs get that, because I just think they're so much more interesting than. No offense to the Pistons. I thought Charlotte would be interesting because, I mean, those types of players just don't typically end up there, but I think they'll do okay in the draft. Portland would have been interesting for sure. But San Antonio feels awesome. And I'm just, the draft lottery is a unique animal and I like it. I know there's a lot of conspiracy theorists out there, but listen, the NBA ain't planning on the Spurs. Like, if there was conspiracy theories, then you know, we would have figured out a way for, I don't know. There wasn't really a super sexy team, I guess, in the lottery this year, but you know what I mean. Like, it isn't going to be San Antonio, the smallest market, I believe, that the NBA operates in, and one of the smallest markets that exists in pro sports. But here it is. And the Spurs get another one and Pop gets another one. And he's seriously going to coach till he's 90, I think now. and here we go. Like it's perfect. It is the perfect storyline.
And I guess my question is, at what point do we start to take the Spurs as a serious contender again? I mean, does this edition of Wembanyama right away vault them into the conversation of, you know, not only a playoff team, but a team that could, you know, go further than that?
No, I don't think so. I'm just like, don't look, Tommy, because I'm looking right now because I needed to, and I'll fully admit it. Outside of Devontae Graham, who you probably know just because you're a Jayhawk guy, give me two other players on the Spurs roster right now.
Oh, man. I don't think I can do that. I don't know.
That's the problem. And I'm even looking at the roster, Tommy, and I don't know who any of these players are. Like, really. Like, Doug McDermott's on the team. Do you know that? I mean,
okay, yeah.
Like,
doesn't really move the needle for me, but okay.
No,
I know that name.
You know who their leading scorer is? I could honestly give you 3,000 guesses at who their leading scorer was this year, and you wouldn't get it right.
Tell me.
Keldon Johnson.
Cool.
Out of Kentucky. I don't even remember him at Kentucky. He was drafted in 2019. That's who their leading scorer was at 22 points a game. We ought to probably know who that is. Second leading scorer, Devontae Graham was their third. Second leading scorer, another guy I honestly don't think I've ever heard of him. Devin Vassell for the folks at home. 18.5 points a game. These guys are pretty good. I'm not going
to win. I'm not going to win the trivia contest in picking the roster for the Spurs.
He played at Florida State. I don't remember Johnson or Vassell in college.
No,
we watched the heck out of college. Jacob Podol's on the team. We remember Jacob Podol, of course. Devontae Graham's on the team. We remember Devontae Graham. Like, so, no, I don't think Wembanyama is going to all of a sudden lead them to a title. Andrew chimes in on our video stream that Keldon Johnson and Zach Collins helped him win a lot of money in his fantasy league. Good for you, Andrew. Did you know who they were, though? Or did you just luck into getting the two leading scorers for a not very good team? I don't know what you do now. And the other problem the Spurs will have, and this is, you know, Tim Duncan, that was one of the all-time, like, perfect fit, walk onto a great roster type situations. This isn't that. Like, and here will be the challenge for San Antonio that they've always had, right? Like, it's hard for them. They're not going to draw in a lot of free agent talent, but they do such a good job with international players. And it looks like, I mean, these guys are youngish. They're probably pretty good pieces. I legitimately have no idea, but no, I even as good as we think Wembanyama is going to be, I don't think it's going to be immediate like that. But I think long-term, yes, you could probably see, like, again, we've seen this too many times. The success is coming for San Antonio. 869-1240 is the IHOP hotline. Let's take a break. We'll come back. We're going to give you our Wednesday home run picks over at BetMGM. So we'll do that, and we will get to these recruitment stories as well as we go through. And then there's a couple other interesting nuggets that are happening. But a lot to go, a lot to get in on this Wednesday edition. It's just game one's got us so hyped up. The most hyped I think we've ever collectively been for the NBA by far this year came after game one of that Western Conference Finals last night into a draft lottery night. Sports Daily rolls forward on a Wednesday.
KFH.
Use a BetMGM bonus bet to place your next wager on any game in any sport. To receive your bonus bet, simply log into your BetMGM account every Saturday and Wednesday between May 13th through June 7th to bet on any game of your choice. Then add any type of bet on any game to your bet slip and activate your bonus bet. There's no deposit or additional wager required. Want even more BetMGM action? Enjoy the best daily promotions, live betting options, and the all-new signature bets only at BetMGM. BetMGM and GameSense remind you to play responsibly and offer resources to help you make appropriate choices. Promotion may differ per customer. BetMGM.com for T's and C's. 21 plus and physically present in Kansas to bet. Existing customer offer. All promotions are subject to qualification and eligibility requirements. Rewards issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets. Bonus bets expire 7 days from issuance. Please gamble responsibly. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-522-4700 in partnership with Kansas Crossing Casino and Hotel. My bonus bet today is a $2 bonus bet, so I'll figure out a way to use that. The other thing that happens on Wednesdays, Tommy, on BetMGM, which is one we love to talk about here on this program, is the home run call your shot bet on Wednesdays, typically on BetMGM. So that promotion is usually there. We'll have to go back and check and make sure they're still doing that here in May. But if it is, just talk about a home run bet, Tommy, on this Wednesday. I'm gonna look inside the Rockies and the Reds, and I gotta wait till the lineups come out because it's a day game and you never know. But once the lineups come out, if Jake Fraley is in the game, I'm gonna take that for the Reds in Colorado in a game that you assume when they're in Colorado and Colorado can't pitch that would be there.
I'm really disappointed you're not going with your auto bet of Josh Young. I mean, you've had him the last 3 or 4 weeks?
Yep, and he's paid twice, but he didn't last week. And when you go up against Strider, I think that's a nice chance to pivot.
By the way, I want to mention I actually got a $5 bonus bet on BetMGM today, so got to find a way to use that. I'm not sure. I mean, it's just kind of luck of the draw, right? So you got $2, I got $5. As far as my home run bet for the day, I'm taking a look at the Diamondbacks and the Athletics. The A's are god-awful, as we all know, the worst team in baseball. Their starting pitcher for today is Luis Medina, who's 0-2 with an ERA over 8. Not good at all. Give me Christian Walker from the Diamondbacks to hit a home run in this game.
I like it. I like that. All right. So there you go. There's our 2 home run calls for a Wednesday, which we'll continue to try to do. And we'll look for that promo. I don't, it's whether it's there or not. I like making these home run calls just for the heck of it. And so that's there for you. Fraley and Christian Walker, 2 that may not be traditional picks. I like it. Tommy, let's get one of our 2 college recruiting news stories out of the way, and let's talk about another Brown coming to Lawrence. Another one. There's a bunch of them, and they're all really good at basketball. But we've got another one coming in now to Lawrence. It does fill a need. It's Parker Brown. He's a big guy. He's been at Mizzou to begin his career, then at Santa Clara most recently. But he's a grad transfer, so he won't have to sit out. He'll be able to come in right away. And, there you go. What do you think?
I'm okay with it. I think it's a good move for KU. You and I texted about it yesterday. This isn't groundbreaking. It's not anything that's going to make you jump up and down. But I do think that clearly they had a need for depth in the front court, and we've talked about that at length. They needed to find somebody, to replace Ernest Uday, to replace Zuby Ejiofor. I don't think Parker Brown replaces the talent level or the ceiling of either one of these guys, but you are at least able to get some minutes out of him as a backup guy, to replace Hunter Dickinson if Dickinson needs a break, a breather, gets in foul trouble, that sort of thing. I don't think they're done looking at talent in the front court. I think you need somebody else who can play, a big role of 4 or 5. But at least with this signing, you've got somebody that's familiar with Bill Self, the family connections, all of that. I'm fine with it. I think it's an okay pickup.
I do too. I hope people understand what it is, right? Like, let's not make more of this than it is. This is a depth pick with some nostalgic qualities, some familiarity, certainly a really cool opportunity for Parker Brown. But I would suspect, Tommy, that he plays about, I don't know, 10 to 15 minutes a game next year. I mean, I don't think it's going to be much. I think it's going to be either for a breather or foul trouble. And most importantly, a presence, I would hope, defensively down low. I hope that's what they get. And you know, he's got a chance to get better. I think, you know, that's the one thing I think, you know, there's got to be fairness on both sides. Be fair to what he's been over his college career. Like he was what would you say, average player at Santa Clara?
He was okay at Santa Clara.
So
he averaged right about 8 points and 5 rebounds a game for Santa Clara. He was fine.
Don't expect an average player for Santa Clara to come be an above average player at KU. Just have appropriate expectations, and I think everything will be fine. And also, I think that it's reasonable to consider one of the coaches in college basketball that has had tremendous success with big players over there, you know, over his career, and Bill Self could get a little more out of Parker Brown. I think that's absolutely possible.
I think the other thing to keep in mind with Parker Brown and the way his game has developed over the course of his career at Missouri, he was there for a period of time, and then Santa Clara, is that he's a fairly efficient player. He's, you know, played pretty well when it comes to high percentage shots around the rim. He's good at that. Anything away from the rim, he's not good at all. And so defenses, when he's in the game, I mean, they're going to want him to try to get away from the rim a little bit. That's kind of where I think that Bill Self is going to have to try to work with him and figure out exactly the best way to utilize him, because, you know, defenses will adjust very quickly, right? I mean, they'll know that if, you know, even if Parker Brown is only playing a handful of minutes a game, you know that he's going to do well around the rim and not well outside. Then you try to push him to the outside. And so that's going to have to be, you know, some areas that he works on.
Yeah. I just need him to be, I just need him first and foremost to be depth, right? First and foremost, be able to spell the 4 or the 5 when necessary, probably more of the 5 than the 4 for him based on what we've seen, but maybe both. And you brought this up when we were talking about it yesterday, and it's a good point, and I've seen others bring it up too. This does allow the coaching staff to really hone in on exactly what they want to do with that last spot, right? They have one more. Is that right? One.
I think they have 2 more. I think they have 2 more scholarships left.
So if they have 2 more, you've got the draft withdrawal date. I think it's June 12th or 13th, something like that. You can sort of hone in now, and I think you can chill and see who comes back out of the draft. Number one, I think you've allowed yourself some time to really evaluate those possibilities, which is important, and that will help, right? And then at that point, maybe there is an impact guy. Maybe there is a high impact player that you'd be able to go get, or you can really focus in on exactly what it is as you evaluate the roster that you need. Like, what does this team still need? I think we all agree that they need another shot maker, just like a true shot maker, right? They might have that, though. I mean, they might have that in some of these really, really talented young players on the roster. So I don't know. But yeah, no, I think it was an exciting move. I love the nostalgia of it. Look, if he's better than advertised, it's going to be one of the great stories to follow next year. It's going to be so much fun. So I'm rooting for that. I am on board with this completely. I just really hope that people expect appropriately and don't
you're not getting
too much like
yeah, you're not getting Christian Brown 2.0. I mean, I know that Parker is the older brother, but you're not getting a replica of Christian Brown. He's a different player. He's 4 inches taller than Brown is. He's not an NBA caliber guy. We've seen Christian Brown play really well in the playoffs, had a big block on AD last night that was awesome. That's not Parker Brown. Temper your expectations a little bit, but it is a cool story. He does provide some much needed depth in the front court for Bill Self. I'm okay with it.
Yep, I am too. And we've seen players of that model succeed with Self a lot, right? Just experienced, grinders that can, and they can help him. He can help them, as much on the practice floor probably as anywhere else. So that's a cool signing. Wichita State women made a really cool addition yesterday. We'll talk a little bit about that. There's some hockey news, maybe at the NHL level, that pertains to us here that we still want to get into. Maybe time today, if not today, another time. Davante Adams is apparently unhappy in Vegas, and it begs a question for me, and we'll answer this either today or sometime this week. Is it worth it to go spend a lot of money on a wide receiver in the NFL? A lot of things to consider. The IHOP hotline is open for you, 869-1240. Max Power producing. I'm Jacob East Tommy. We'll be right back.
Laugh Out Loud Mornings with Bob and Tom on 97.5 and 1240 KFH. Wichita's most listened to sports radio. Always live on the free Odyssey app.
All right, welcome back. Sports Daily, hour number 2. Glad to have you here with us. It is an exciting time of year. We've got the NBA Finals. NBA Conference Finals, I should say. And a lot of news and notes to get through. We've been doing that in hour number 1. If you missed anything, you can go back and listen on the Odyssey app where it streams every day. You can also go back and watch our video streams now as you're watching some on Facebook, on YouTube, some on Twitter. Happy to have you on KFH both ways to take in the show for you. And it's been a lot of fun as we've made our way through this video stream adventure. All right, Tommy. So when Terry Nooner was hired at Wichita State to take over the women's basketball program, I think we all sort of identify the same thing, right? Like, we've got to get local talent. There's so much great girls basketball in this state at the high school level. Got to get some local flavor. The rosters the last 3 or 4 years have been so international based, which is really interesting and cool to get to know those players. But at the same time, it's a little easier, I think, to generate buzz and excitement when you know the players, and especially when you're trying to recapture some of that buzz and excitement. And so, that was something, and we're not the only ones. Nooner talked about that, at his introduction, and then went out and added Antoine Scales to his staff, who is a high school coaching legend here with one of the great dynasties of all time at Wichita South. It's like, okay, well, clearly we're not off there and we're on to something. What happens next? Well, yesterday they get their first signee to the new roster, and it's Treasure Jobe. And you might remember Treasure Jobe if you follow high school sports. She was an outstanding player at Wichita South for Antoine Scales. A little undersized, ended up going to Emporia State, and is a superstar, like a legend there. And if she played there this next year, probably would break a lot of records at Emporia State. Scored more than 20 points a game last year, and now comes in and joins Wichita State. Nooner said she's a dynamic playmaker, dynamic scorer, and he calls her one of the most sought-after transfers in the country. Now, that's interesting because if you look at lists, you're going to see Division I players. But we know in the transfer era that, players can jump levels, and if they're great players, they're great players. So that's a really interesting one. And I think this is exciting one because you've got somebody from Wichita coming back to Wichita State. Treasure Jobe, what an opportunity for her, who's had a great career at Emporia State, now comes back, reunites with Antoine Scales and then Terry Nooner. But this is what we want to see, right? These great local players that we feel like could absolutely succeed at the next level, get a collection of that kind of talent, and let's see what happens. Let's take our chances, because we see great players from this region go to other places and succeed all the time. And it's not just Wichita. It's around the area. Taylor Robertson of McPherson just became the greatest three-point shooter in women's college basketball history. Like, let's see if we can get players like that to stick around, right? And that's what's going to be fun to watch. There's all kinds of credibility, I think, on this staff that will help that happen. And this is a first, an opening salvo, Tommy, I think that's exciting for everybody.
Yeah, that transfer makes a lot of sense, not only for the connection that you mentioned with Antoine Scales and all of that, but also the Emporia State connection, right? Brandon Schneider at KU coached at Emporia State. Terry Nooner coached under Brandon Schneider. So that connection makes some sense there. I don't know how strong the relationship, if any,
been
was
a long time
between Nooner and Treasure Jobe. Right. But still, I mean, there is that Emporia State connection, right? And so I think that plus obviously her coming to play for Antoine Scales, who is now an assistant on Terry Nooner's staff, it makes a lot of sense. And so I'm with you. I mean, one of the biggest issues I would say with Shocker basketball, to an extent, both men's and women's, but I mean, primarily women's, is the fact that there's a lot of local talent that isn't sticking around historically in Wichita. And so if Nooner can prioritize that, I know that's a big deal for him. I think that there is enough talent in this market to be able to have, number one, familiarity with the players that are there and have the fan base get behind it. But number two, also, you've just got, you've got really, really strong, talented kids staying in Wichita to have their basketball careers happen here. That's a big deal. It'd be one thing if the talent pool wasn't significantly deep in women's basketball and you're trying to get local names just for the name recognition, but they're really not contributing. There are really, really, really talented women's basketball players coming from Wichita, getting them to stay here is paramount.
And we've seen on the men's side, right, some really gifted, and they didn't always start at Wichita State, but that have ended up there. Connor Frankamp jumps out to the forefront. Samaje Haynes-Jones, though, was a guy that stayed in Wichita. He went to Hutch for a little while. And
how about Xavier Bell on the roster right now, for Wichita State?
More recently is there. They had one of the Chapman brothers, Steele, was there for a little bit. So it's happened on the men's side, and a lot of the walk-ons and all these kinds of things. And that does add to it. On the women's side, I would make a case, Tommy, that the girls' basketball pool is deeper probably than the men's side. And this is interesting, and it's going to be interesting to watch this play out. I don't know if we'll be able to maintain the level of high level girls basketball players that have gone out in the last, 5-6 years. But even if it's a lesser version of that, it's going to be a talent pool. I mean, it is remarkable how many great players, not just good, but great players, have left this area for other places. We saw Ziana Walker come back to Kansas State, and that's awesome. That's fantastic news. We've seen, two of our greatest players in recent years in Addie Brown and Emily Ryan go to Iowa State. Like, why are they going to Iowa State? Like, how can we keep those kinds of players around here? And so I'm excited about it. I think there's an opportunity here to do something awesome. And I hope here's what I hope more than anything, Tommy, because you mentioned, and walk down this path with me for just a second. You mentioned Brandon Schneider. So Brandon Schneider, while he was at Emporia State, coached against his dad, who was at West Texas A&M when I was there. And his other son was on the staff with him at You had this awesome family dynamic. And that was, you talk about like packed arenas, and we're the big arenas, like women's basketball. When you get a local and a hometown vibe to it, it can go nuts. And we're seeing nationally, just in general, the popularity explode because I think the exposure is getting so much higher. I think there's a real opportunity here for Wichita State to develop something and create another thing, much like they have with softball over the last, 5-7 years, that people are really excited about. And man, in the wintertime, like, why not go to those games? If you've got a really good team, I think people are there. I think people are excited about it. It's this whole new opportunity. And they were messing around with the tournament and stuff not that long ago. And then they had all the controversy with the coaching staff, and they had to pick up the pieces from that. But this is a chance to really capture something, and I hope that they do that.
So I've got a guy that works with me who is from Iowa, and he's a big Iowa Hawkeyes fan. And I think that, if you were to ask him, I mean, he's a fan of everything Iowa, but he was locked in more to Caitlin Clark and what the Iowa women's team was doing this year than probably the men's team. And of course, Caitlin Clark is a transcendent player, right? Like it's just, incredible what she does, but still like that appetite is there for a guy that, that I work with that is a diehard and always has been a diehard Iowa men's basketball fan. I think he was paying more attention to what the women's team was doing this year. So there certainly is an appetite, I think, for women's basketball. It's growing. It has been. I mean, look at how much, press and attention the women's title game got this year. I mean, it was huge. It was massive. So there is certainly that appetite is growing. It's growing year by year. And so if you can capture some of that at Wichita, and I'm not saying that there's a Caitlin Clark like talent out there for Terry Nooner to get. What I'm saying is that overall there is a bigger appetite for women's basketball right now than there used to be, and so there is a prime opportunity for Shocker women's basketball to take that next step. They were in the conversations and and postseason play, WNIT, all of that under Keitha Adams, but you have an opportunity now to be able to even take it even further in the future. And it starts with getting local players to stay right here.
Yeah. I mean, look, it's as much about excitement as it is anything else. And that's what needs to happen. And this is an exciting potential, because what's going to happen is, imagine if Treasure Jobe is great, like as great as she's been at Emporia State. everybody's going to talk about that because she's from Wichita, right? Like she's from here, not just from the region, but straight up from the 316. And that's what you got to have to build that excitement and build that buzz. And I hope that she is, tremendously successful. They're just, it looks like it's going to be fun. I don't know how quickly, that can happen. I don't know how long it will take to rebuild and do those things. I honestly, I have no idea, but I think that, the early things, like everything, the hire made a ton of sense. And then the coaching staff, when you see Scales come back, makes a ton of sense. And then, a signing like this, it is getting a little buzz and a little excitement. So that's what you want to see out of those situations and things. All right, Tommy, let's hit now on a story that you brought up that I'm not aware of, but you can set it up and explain it here. There is a developing situation in the world of hockey, and it has to do with the Arizona Coyotes, and it has to do with their arena, and it has to do with their connection to Wichita, and maybe has even more to do with a connection to the region here. So walk us through this. What's happening?
Yeah, so there's been a lot of drama over the last, I would say couple of years with the Arizona Coyotes, and anybody that, follows the NHL or knows much about hockey at all has followed this drama with their venue, with their arena. And ultimately it's gone to a public vote in Tempe, Arizona for the money to build a new stadium for the Arizona Coyotes. That public vote, that referendum was soundly defeated in Tempe, Arizona. And so now the NHL, the ownership of the Coyotes, they are exploring other options to potentially move that franchise to another market. And there are some names of cities that are, that are out there that have been floated. Salt Lake City is one of them. Houston is one of them. Kansas City is another one. And I know that there's a group of folks in the Kansas City market that are very, very active in hoping to lure the Arizona Coyotes to Kansas City with the T-Mobile Center already downtown in Power and Light. We know the way that market operates with sports, and it's a market where the fan base is very, very passionate. Typically, that there could be an option there. I don't know how realistic it is, but I do know that the mayor of Kansas City, Quentin Lucas, this morning tweeted to the NHL, saying, hey, let's have a conversation about, what it might look like to bring the NHL to Kansas City. So I don't know how realistic it is, like I said before, but it's certainly something to monitor.
Kansas City, and Lucas is just the representative right now, but just in general, Kansas City needs another team. It has too good an arena, and the NBA seems unlikely, but that arena downtown needs to have a hockey or an NBA team, and maybe both, but just at the moment, one or the other, right? So there's zero chance that doesn't go well, right? Like if you put an NHL team in downtown Kansas City, it will be just like it's been in Vegas, just like it's been in Seattle. People will go nuts for it. It makes a ton of sense. And Salt Lake City probably does too. I mean, some of the cities like Houston to me makes the least sense. Houston, you're fighting a lot of battles if you're trying to go to Houston. Man, get into Kansas City. And Salt Lake City would be a good one too, but get into Kansas City. That would be such a massive win for this area, right? Like to have that opportunity and that ability to have that there.
Yeah, well, on top of that too, don't forget that the Coyotes played a preseason game here in Wichita last year,
right?
And they're going to be playing another one this September. So there already is some familiarity with this region. I've heard a few people throw out the idea that they could relocate to Wichita. That's not going to happen. I'll tell you that right now. This city, is not big enough to support an NHL team. But Kansas City, I think could certainly be feasible. That could be something that, could work out really well. And you know what? I know that there's also a group of folks that would desperately love to have an NBA team in Kansas City. I don't know which one is more likely. I would imagine that since there is a team that looks like they could potentially be on the move in the NHL, that one may be more likely than an NBA team, because I'm not sure that there's an NBA franchise right now that's ready to move.
NHL seems more likely to me because the NBA is going to almost certainly take, expansion. And I don't know if that's in the cards. And let me tell you right now that The NBA is going to want to get into Vegas before it gets into anywhere, just like everybody else, right? Vegas is the spot right now. So, I don't know. And Seattle, quite frankly, back to Seattle. I would say the NBA is unlikely, but I think the NHL makes a lot of sense. Look at the success of both soccer franchises seemingly there. Obviously, we know the Chiefs, the Royals are trying to get downtown. It would make sense. I mean, it really would. And, in the region too, like you have St. Louis. There's not a ton. Like you have a chance to draw from a really large pool. And I would think, Tommy, for the Thunder, something like that would be really good too, right? Because you're just generating more hockey fans, and more hockey fans is good for you guys and for everybody.
Yeah. The other thing too, to keep in mind with this is that you've got the T-Mobile Center already there. It's ready to go. You'd have to, I think, retrofit it to fit hockey. I don't exactly know how that works, but that arena is already there. So you don't have to try to build a new arena. It's right in the middle of Power and Light. It's ready to go. It doesn't host any sports right now. It's a concert venue, but you could obviously, I mean, it hosts like the Big 12 championship and things like that, but like not regularly, like having a team that calls it home. So you would probably have to do a little bit of work in that building, I would think, but it'd be significantly less than trying to build, a new arena. You wouldn't have to try to convince taxpayers to, give public dollars to build it. It's already there and ready to go. So in that sense, that should be a pretty easy putt.
I assume Salt Lake City would be in the same scenario because they have an NBA arena there. It's exciting to think about. I really, I'm on board with it. And I think these leagues are probably pretty aware of what Kansas City is becoming just as a city in general, which, the draft and the Chiefs' success would probably show the World Cup, right? Like, I think it's becoming a city that, absolutely deserves another pro sports franchise, and hockey would make a ton of sense. And I'm just telling you, people would go nuts for it. It's just like in Vegas and Seattle. I mean, I've seen these Kraken games because they're on late at night against the Stars. It's fun, man. Like it's exciting. The Vegas has been that way since inception. But Kansas City would make a ton of sense for those same reasons. 869-1240. We're going to do a little exercise on NFL wide receivers when we return. Davante Adams in the news. He's, not really agreeing with management there in Vegas. It just makes me wonder, are these big contract wide receivers ever worth it? We'll explore as we continue on Sports Daily.
When I
Dude, you gotta hear this.
Go ahead. I think I want to hear this.
Sports Daily is on KFH.
All right, welcome back in Sports Daily, everybody. Jacob Albrock, Tommy Castor with you here. And you know, it's an interesting day in our world because we are locked into the NBA. Now, that is no other reason than we're college basketball centric here, but we are captivated by the Western Conference Finals going into it, and Game 1 did not disappoint as Denver holds off the Lakers. And, you know, if you missed our discussion on it in depth, you can go back and listen on the Odyssey app. We opened the show with it, but just a fascinating series that gave us a fascinating Game 1. And I hope, even though I don't think it's nearly as juicy and exciting storyline wise with Boston and Miami, Jimmy Butler can make this thing very interesting if Miami's able to hang around. That game is tonight. Andrew appreciates the NBA coverage and says he's here for it. Well, Andrew, will do our best. Let's, you know, we had so much fun guessing players on the Spurs roster. We should do that sometime, Tommy. Like maybe one day every week, we'll take the bad NBA teams and try to guess players on their rosters. Like Portland outside of Damian Lillard. You got to give me 3 players. Like we'll do this, and we won't cheat because we have no idea. Like, and fully will admit it. Like it's, you know, we're at the top end of the NBA locked in, but the bottom end, these ain't those days anymore.
And I'm like begrudgingly becoming a fan of the playoffs. Like if you follow me on Twitter, by the way, for years I've talked about how much I hate the NBA, dislike it. I don't usually like the style of play. I don't like the drama, like all the stuff that, you know, is that narrative around the NBA. But man, I mentioned it at the top of the show. This playoff series this season, I'm kind of starting to come off my stance a little bit. It's become more fun to watch, more fun to follow, more fun to cover. I don't want to go out on a limb yet and say I'm becoming an overall NBA fan, but these playoffs, it's made it a lot easier for me to lock in.
The time of year, the load management aspect of the new regular season makes it pretty impossible for me to like lock in as a regular season. And because we just are so much more, you know, involved in college basketball here. But I've always said the postseason, when everybody's going, you know, for as best they can, full strength for full amount, like, God, it's hard to beat. Like, it is such a high level of basketball, and it's so fun. And Game 1 of the Western Conference Finals is a perfect example of that. All right, Tommy, I read this morning Davante Adams is saying like he's not on the same page with the front office in Vegas and what they're doing, and, you know, he'll battle through it and all these things. And I just think about what Vegas gave up to go get Davante Adams, which didn't make sense at the time. They were swinging big. They gave up a ton of draft capital to do it. And then, you know, and then they give him the big contract. Chiefs, similar situation with Tyreek Hill. I'm going to give you a list of the highest paid wide receivers in football. And I want you to tell me if you think this is worth it for these teams. Tyreek Hill's at the top, $30 million a year. Davante Adams, next on the list, $28 million a year. By the way, 29 years old, 31 years old. DeAndre Hopkins at 31 years old, $27 million a year. Cooper Kupp, 30 years old, $26 million a year, a little more than. A.J. Brown, he's the youngest on this top tier by quite a ways at $25 million. DK Metcalf, the other one, at $24 million is young. Steph Diggs is in there at 30. So that's your top tier. Then you get into some of the younger guys like Deebo Samuel, Terry McLaurin, DJ Moore, Keenan Allen and Mike Williams are both up there at 20 plus million. Amari Cooper, 20 million. And I always wonder this. And if you look at this list that I just named off, Cooper Kupp definitely helped the Rams win a Super Bowl, right? A.J. Brown was definitely a big reason the Eagles were in a Super Bowl. Steph Diggs has been a big part of the Bills. But is it worth it to spend this kind of money on wide receivers in the NFL? Because to me, with all the great receivers now that seemingly come out of every draft, it's almost getting to that point where like reloading and retooling is the way to go. But how do you let Cooper Kupp walk? You can't really do it. But the Chiefs did it, right? The Chiefs did it with Tyreek Hill, and it didn't hurt them. Like, that's the example, I think. I just don't know if it's worth it for these great wide receivers and the price they command.
Well, yeah, look at the Chiefs as a perfect example. Like I think they're in the bottom tier of total salaries for wide receivers in the NFL, and they won a Super Bowl without a star wide receiver that they paid a lot of money. They let Tyreek Hill go. They replaced him with a number of bodies in that room with Smith-Schuster and Valdez-Scantling and Sky Moore and others, and they won a championship without having a high-paid star wide receiver. So it can be done. I think one thing about Davante Adams, as far as whether or not he's worth it and the money that he's being paid, the only counter to that I would say, where I would say, yes, he is worth it, is that he has the most receiving yards in the NFL in the last 7 years. So there's a reason why he's making the money that he is, right?
I'm not saying that these players aren't great. I mean, Davante Adams, Tyreek Hill, DeAndre Hopkins, Cooper Kupp, they're all fantastic players. Like, they're all great. Right. And Davante, and this is the interesting part to me. So Davante Adams, when he's with Aaron Rodgers, certainly would feel like he's worth it, right? Tyreek Hill was great either way. DeAndre Hopkins is great with several quarterbacks. But like, if you don't have a great quarterback, I don't think you can make these signings if you don't have a great quarterback. But then you get the counter to that, which is, can a great quarterback be great even without them and spend your money elsewhere? It is really interesting, and always has been to me, this dynamic of wide receivers, because for a long time, and it's no longer this way, but for a long time in the NFL, like, great wide receivers never seem to win Super Bowls. And so those days are gone, right? That's the league is so pass happy. You've got to have good receivers. I don't know. Like, I don't know, as you sit here and you're the Raiders and you go and you spend big to get Davante Adams, who's this amazing player, but who do you have to throw to him, right? And does he fit what you need to do? Chris asks, are wide receivers becoming the new running backs when it comes to contracts, rookies, and cast-offs in lieu of expensive bets? I don't think so, because the league is so pass happy, and their shelf lives, while not super long, are longer certainly than running backs. So no, I don't think it's to that point. In fact, I think they're getting drafted higher than they ever have been, because they are getting more expensive, and it is worth it to spend high draft capital on him, because good, young, cheap, inexpensive wide receivers have a tremendous value. Not as much as a quarterback, not as much probably as a pass rusher, but in today's NFL, they might be third on the list, Tommy, of, if you can get good young ones that are a little cheaper while you have them on those rookie deals, have a pretty high value in this league.
And isn't that's been the strategy for Kansas City ever since Tyreek Hill left? It's been, let's try to go get value as opposed to dropping a ton of money, on a wide receiver that is proven. And I think that a lot of it is developing talent, right? It's trying to get the most out of guys where you find the value in them. And then you've got some vets that come over that are, they're willing to play for a year and prove it and then go on somewhere else, like Juju Smith-Schuster. But, they're developing guys like Sky Moore, and they're developing Justin Ross. We'll see how he does. They've got Rashee Rice now that they drafted. Like, they would rather find Kadarius Toney is there, never really turned out in New York, and they want to try to unlock him a little bit more in Kansas City. They would rather do that and develop talent and find value that way than go out and spend a lot of money on really highly paid wide receivers, and then be able to spread that money, that budget that they have, in their, the payroll and all of that in other areas that really need the help. That they're not willing to drop a lot of money on wide receivers. Otherwise, if they were, they would still have Tyreek Hill.
It's and then you can't really afford both, right? If you have a great quarterback, you can't really afford a great quarterback and a great wide receiver. So it is a really interesting dynamic that's coming alive in the NFL, because we've never seen this many great receivers all at one time, which makes total sense because of the way the game has shifted, down to the youth levels and in how the game has become pass happy. So I'm intrigued by it, because I don't know what the best way is. The best way is to have Patrick Mahomes, right? And so you don't have to worry about it. That's the best way. But if you don't have Patrick Mahomes, what do? And the team that jumps and screams up to the forefront on this dynamic is Cincinnati, right? Because they're going to have they can't keep, I don't think they can't keep T. Higgins and Burrow and Jamar Chase. Like, I don't know how that's going to be possible. The Chargers have 2 high-paid wide receivers, but they haven't had to pay Herbert yet, and they're probably going to be looking to move on from one of those receivers soon, which is why they took Quentin Johnston. But I just don't know, because think about if Cincinnati does that, like, what do they do elsewhere? Like, what are they going to be able to do? What are they going to be able to do?
There's a reason why their offensive line has been bad, over the last couple of years, right? I mean, like, it's not like they've got a ton of money to pay him.
Because don't you think that, T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, we know, right? Jamar Chase is going to reset the market. T. Higgins probably won't do that. But if he gets up around, let's say, I don't know, DK Metcalf kind of money, Terry McLaurin, that's probably reasonable. So let's say it's around 25. And I think Jamar Chase will reset. So let's just match it to Tyreek Hill's 30, right? So there's $55 million, which is what you also have to pay quarterbacks in the current market. So let's say Burrow is at 55 or 60. You're talking about $110 million of your payroll for 3 players. Like, that doesn't seem sustainable to me. I don't know how that can work. And so I don't know. And then at that point, like, okay, T. Higgins goes to the open market, because I think they would choose Chase over Higgins. He goes to the open market. How do you justify paying that much money for a receiver on the open market? And we see teams do it, plus draft picks. They do it all the time. Steph Diggs, A.J. Brown, Devontae Adams. We thought it was going to happen with DeAndre Hopkins. Like, teams are doing it. So I don't know. It is, and it got brought up because Devontae Adams doesn't seem to be fitting. Devontae Adams, the Raiders aren't going to win a Super Bowl with Devontae Adams. It's one of the great receivers in the game. And it's just not, it's not going to do anything. It's not going to do anything for them. It makes you really scratch your head at why they would do that in the first place. Now, they were pretty bullish on their prospects last year, but it certainly didn't work out. Now it's not going to. So what are they going to do? They're just going to eat that money every year?
Yeah, I think that there is an argument that the Raiders tried to make by saying, hey, if we can get the NFL leading receiver from the last 6 years into our locker room, he can help us get over the hump, make it to the playoffs and move, down the line. The issue with that was that they didn't have a quarterback to throw the ball to him. Derek Carr, it wasn't working. And then he, of course, was done, midway or little past midway through the season. Now, what are you going to have? You got Jimmy Garoppolo. You feel comfortable with Jimmy Garoppolo throwing Devontae Adams the football and saying that's a playoff team? I don't think so. Like, I really don't. And so while I don't understand the amount of money that was given to Devontae Adams, I understand the appeal of having a Devontae Adams-like receiver in your locker room, but it can't just be Devontae Adams. Like, you have to have the other pieces around to complement him, and they don't. And so that's why it didn't make any sense to me. Not the fact that he's a great receiver. He's the best in the NFL, but you don't have anybody else around him to be able to take care of him and boost him up. It's a huge drop off. It was a huge drop off a year ago, going from Aaron Rodgers to Derek Carr. And I would argue it's an even bigger drop off now going to Jimmy Garoppolo.
Yeah, I think so. Here's the other part of it. Is there any conspiracy theory? Is there any conspiracy theory in your head that exists that Devontae Adams is doing what he can to get out of Vegas to maybe end up with the Jets and Aaron Rodgers. I wonder if
Absolutely.
they could even could they afford
100%.
that?
Yeah.
Could they afford
I don't think it's
that?
going to happen, but sure. I mean, I think Adams can be vocal and, try to get out of town and go reunite with Rodgers. I don't think he will. I don't think the Jets will do that. But man, that certainly could be a strategy.
I don't know if the Jets can afford that, but I think they would absolutely do that. If you're the Jets, let's just invent a scenario here. And I don't know that teams can't eat money like that in the NFL, can they? They can't absorb payroll like they can, say, in Major League Baseball. Can they? I don't know if they can.
I don't know.
But let's say there could be a way. Let's say the Jets do that and then restructure Adams' contract to push that money down the road or something. What would you be willing to give up if you were the Jets, if you could get Devontae Adams on that roster right now? A lot, right?
Yeah.
I'd give up another first because you've already gone all in. Like, you've gone all in here. If the Raiders said, we're going to need a first and a second, we got to get our draft picks back that we traded for him, and you're the Jets. And it just totally hamstrings your franchise 3, 4, 5 years from now. Do you go do that right now? You kind of have to, don't you?
I mean, if the Jets do that, if that works out, and they don't win a championship and they pushed all their chips into the center of the table and you're going all in for it and they don't make it, I don't know if there would be a more colossal disappointment than the New York Jets if that were to happen.
Tommy, you've offended Max, the Patriots diehard, with your Jimmy Garoppolo take. Max, what's going on here? I'll give you a chance to step up and defend your boy, Jimmy G. But Max sent me a text. I'll tell you what he said. He said, Jimmy G isn't bad. He's more than serviceable. His problem is he's very delicate and is never in a hurry to return after injury. Well, yeah. I mean, he's very fragile. Delicate's maybe a little harsh, Max. Fragile. He gets hurt all the time. Delicate. He's not bad, or he's not bad looking. Yeah. Yeah, he's hurt a lot. He's hurt all the time. Yeah, he's hurt all the time. Has there ever been a better looking quarterback room than the Patriots had with Brady and Jimmy G? Like, that's interesting. Max, I'm giving Max a little bit of a hard time here. Jimmy G is an interesting player. He is, I don't know what he is. Except hurt all the time. Is he a good quarterback? I don't know. I mean, he led the Niners to a Super Bowl, and I don't know. I don't. That's not going to work. I don't see him as a good fit with Devontae Adams, though. The only thing about Jimmy G being in Vegas that's interesting is the reuniting with Josh McDaniels, and I do think Jimmy G is a very smart football player, and so maybe he is capable of getting something out of Adams. But Adams is clearly not wanting to be there. And I don't know. Chris on our video stream says the Jets only have $6 million in space. So they'd have to, I don't know. They could probably restructure. Honestly, they could probably restructure somehow and get, and get that money cleared up if they really, really wanted to. But I don't know if they really, really want to. I think that, man, would they make that trade? I haven't seen that, by the way. That's just us thinking here, that maybe the Jets would be interested. But if it was ever a possibility and you're the Jets, why wouldn't you just push all your chips into the middle of the table at that point? All right, 869-1240 is the number on the IHOP hotline. We got another segment to go here before we tell you what's on tap. We'll come back. There's a story about the Oscar Mayer Wienermobile. Not happy about this. Want Max's take on this, too. Max is an old school guy. We'll get that when we return. Sports Daily coming back at you right after this.
97.5 and
Sports Daily is on KFH.
All right, welcome back in, everybody. I've got you the rest of the way. Jacob Albrocht here, Max with us. Tommy stepped out for our final segment here of the show. Max, it's this story. Buddy just sent me this. I didn't see this. The Oscar Mayer company is renaming, apparently, the Wienermobile to the Frankmobile. They're not calling the drivers hot doggers anymore, but Frankfurters. And the, what used to be the Wiener whistle will now be the Frank whistle. This bugs me. Now they're saying it's, to pay homage to the Frank and blah, blah, blah. What are we doing here, Max? Like, what are we doing here? We don't need to mess with the Wienermobile. Yeah. Is this like a politically correct thing? Like I draw the line. That's unacceptable. Like, are we really going to starve kids one of their few ways to sneak in a borderline inappropriate word into regular conversation when we talk about hot dog wieners? Like, when you're a kid, like, that's a great thing. You get to use that word you're probably not supposed to say, but you get to, because that's what we call hot dogs. And you've got the Wienermobile and all this stuff. Like, what are we doing here, Max? I don't like this one bit. The Frankmobile? What is that? Exactly. Like, what are we doing? It's a hot dog wiener. It's the Wienermobile. Like, they made a whole thing about it. And if you're a company, I'm sorry, Oscar Mayer. Like, if you think people are getting excited and caring about the Frankmobile, the only reason people have ever cared about the Wienermobile is because it's the Wienermobile. And it drives down the road and it's hilarious. It's far less hilarious if it's the Frankmobile. Like, come on. What is that? No, not doing anything for me. The Frankmobile, the Frankfurter instead of the hot dogger. Like, God.
Oh, I'd love to be an Oscar Mayer.
I want to be an Oscar Mayer Frank or Frankfurt. Like, what is it? I don't even. And that song, by the way, Max is older than me. Like, that wasn't even. Like, it's not even. For me, though, like, that is an iconic, like, unbelievable marketing gimmick and tool that Oscar Mayer has had for its hot dogs. I can't tell you if Oscar Mayer has good hot dogs. I have no idea. But you want to talk about brand recognition? Man, the Wienermobile is iconic. And it is not going to be if it's called the Frankmobile. It's just not. That's just bad. It's a bad idea, a bad decision. I don't understand. Maybe it's one of those things like the M&M commercial where they're just messing with us. They just want to get everybody talking about it and riled up, because I'm riled up. I don't like this at all. Maybe that's what it is. Yeah. It kind of like, why? Like, why would you mess with that? Like, what's the point here? Don't call it New Coke. Call it, now they do it. They obviously don't do that anymore. They have Diet and they just call it Zero or all the different flavors and stuff. But new, like, yeah, that almost feels like an attack on Coke, which bothered people. This feels like an attack on calling a hot dog wiener a hot dog wiener and having to call it a hot dog Frank. Like, yeah, let me get one of those Franks. No, nobody says that. And we're taking away a really fun part of being a kid. And that's getting the excuse to say wiener when you're talking about a hot dog and a car in what used to be, I guess, a car. I don't know when this change is happening. Oscar Mayer says it pays homage to the brand's 100% beef Franks as it debuts a tasty new recipe that's more flavorful than ever. It sounds like trying to distance yourself from calling it the Wienermobile to me. That's what it sounds like. And I think that's an absolutely horrible idea. So I don't know. What? Like, why? Like, we don't get to say wiener whistle anymore. We have to say Frank whistle. Nobody's doing that. It's a bad idea. Frank, you can get a hot dog, Frank. Let me get one of those Franks. No, come on. Kids are gonna, whatever. My kids are still calling it the Wienermobile. I'm calling it the Wienermobile. Like, we're not doing this. I'm not. You can tell me what you want me to call it all you want, Oscar Mayer. You're not changing my mind. 869-1240. We'll come back. We'll tell you what's on tap as we wrap up Sports Daily on a Wednesday.
Pizza John's, open since 1969. Dine in Monday through Saturday, 11 a.m. to 9 p.m. at 208 South Baltimore in Derby. Give them a call at 788-2011 or go online at pizzajohnsderby.com. Pizza John's, purveyors of round meals and flat snacks.
Now that you've taken on that big job, you shouldn't have to settle for the big box. You've earned a trip to Northern Tool, and you're ready for the details. We know all about the little things that make the biggest difference. Maybe that's why they call us a problem solver's paradise. From pressure washers to power tools, pallet jacks to push carts, Northern Tool and Equipment carries the brands you depend on, like North Star, DeWalt, Milwaukee, and Strongway. We're made for this. Come see us in store or shop online at northerntool.com.
Toppers Plus Truck Accessories has moved to a new location at 333 Northwest Street. Whether you're working or playing, Toppers Plus will get your truck ready with Rhino linings. Nothing beats a Rhino, the leader in sprayed-on truck bed liners that outperforms plastic drop-in rubber mats and paint-like coatings. They won't crack, peel, or warp and include a lifetime warranty. Toppers Plus, your Rhino dealer. Visit our new location at 333 Northwest Street or toppersplusks.com.
Make your truck work for you!
Get your garden growing strong with 11% off at Menards. Nourish your garden this year with Schultz Plant Food. It's a slow-release formula that feeds your plants and gardens for up to 3 months. Choose from a variety of 3.5-pound bags of Schultz granular plant food for just $3.99 each after 11% rebate. Good through May 21st. Savings are a mail-in rebate. Some exclusions apply. See store for details.
Save big money at Menards.
The back of your closet is no place for your old worn-out boots. Bring the boots back to Red Wing Shoes. We have you covered. For a limited time, bring in your old, nasty, worn-out boots and receive $25 towards a brand new pair. Purchase a new pair of Red Wings, Work, or Irish Setter. New shoes are better for your feet and will make your work go faster. So whether you like to hunt or you're on your feet all day, stop by Red Wing Shoes and check out our selection. We're fully stocked for your footwear needs. Bring the boots back to Red Wing Shoes, 6660 West Kellogg.
Visit Maximum Outdoor Equipment and Service in Andover for your Steel outdoor power tools this season. From legendary chainsaws and dependable trimmers to powerful blowers, hard-working hedge trimmers, power washers, sprayers, and more. Steel is designed for reliability and built for the long haul. Stop by Maximum Outdoor's newest location in Andover, your authorized local Steel dealer for your outdoor power tool needs. South of 21st and Andover Road or MaximumOutdoor.com.
Maximum Outdoor Equipment.
Tired of all the gimmicks and going out of business sales? Don't get fooled again. Crazy J's is where you'll find the best prices on brand new home furnishings and bedding. Guaranteed. Family owned and operated since 1997. They'll go the extra mile to earn your business. Open 7 days a week at 604 North Tyler and 1026 South Oliver. Or visit online at crazyjsfurniture.com.
Crazy J's Furniture and Sleep Shop. Crazy. The safest deal in town.
Are you looking to pave your parking lot or driveway? Call Pave the Way. They specialize in asphalt and concrete paving and repairs and have an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau. They can custom tailor their estimate to fit your individual needs and budget and always make their customers a priority. Call 316-990-5855 today for a fast free estimate or online at pavethewayusa.com.
Pave the way. Kicking asphalt every day.
The KFH Studios, powered by Devon James Injury Lawyers. Call 888-8888. That's 888-8888.
Wichita's radio voice of Kansas City Royals baseball, KFH.
Frank will back you up. The second leg of soccer's Champions League semifinals are here, and Man City hosts Real Madrid, all tied up at 1-1. Man City is on a 22-game unbeaten streak with 18 wins and 4 draws, so I love that streak to continue. 17 times during their unbeaten streak, they've scored 2 or more goals. They'll consider Man City to win over 1.5 goals to be scored. They look unstoppable. I'm Tristan Crick, helping you beat the books.
For the ones finding new ways to ensure the job always gets done. For the ones wearing many hats. For the ones who are hands-on, even from far away. And the ones keeping business moving forward. We are Grainger, offering professional-grade industrial supplies, plus real-time product availability and access to experts ready to answer your toughest questions. Call, clickgrainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Wichita's most listened to sports radio, 97.5 and 1240 KFH.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Sports Daily on KFH. Jacob Albrecht here, wrapping things up. Yeah, Joe asks, so what are we going to call it? Call a wiener dog now, a Frank dog? No, I will not comply. 869-1240 on the IHOP hotline. Put it in the speed dial. Call us tomorrow. Thanks, everybody, for listening on KFH and on the Odyssey app. Thanks, everybody, for watching our video stream on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Been a lot of fun today. Glad to be here with you. Max Power producing. I'm Jacob Albrecht for Tommy Castor. We will see you on Thursday.